It's 2002, and that's sort of a numerical palindrome. So after the enormous highs of 2001 with all its stone cold classics and its avalanche of new console releases, well, 3, the GameCube, the Xbox and the GBA, what has 2002 got for us? It's all about us. Well, it's got some tremendous games and some incredible sequels, that's what. The new generation was bedding in and flexing its muscles, and what a treat for our thumbs that turned out to be. But what is this 2002 thing all about then? Well, it was the year of the Queen's Golden Jubilee. The Queen's Golden Jubilee is a good excuse, of course, for people who dress like a flag to go and dress like a flag in London and wave little flags around without being called a flagger. And well, you know what, she had a pretty poor year that year anyway, with her sister and her mum dying. And if you remember, her mum looked like she had wooden teeth. Attack of the Clones came out and
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Yep, that's some interesting dialogue. Oh, George. Girls Aloud formed from the churning factory that is and was reality television. They stuck around for a bit, getting the obligatory Christmas #1 and featured the world's most attractive Geordie. Cheryl Cole, Cheryl Fernandez-Vicini, Cheryl Payne? No, that one didn't happen. Anyway, Cheryl. World Cup 2002, and we were all compelled to drink at 8 a.m. by virtue of a World Cup being held in Japan and South Korea. England had one of the better teams in the tournament, and so had a really good chance of winning, so they promptly went out of their customary quarter-final stage to eventual champions Brazil. Ronaldo and his funny hair. There was much controversy with South Korea managing to get to a semi-final by beating Italy using some very dodgy officiating to get where they did. Games news, it was a bit quiet. The Sims overtook Myst to be the biggest selling PC game and would quickly get taken over by World of Warcraft, Minecraft, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and others since. Other than that, there was consistent mumblings about Grand Theft Auto not being very nice and not a lot else. So let's stare at some games that didn't make the top 10 and hear all about the dumb rules on why they're there. As I display footage of important games of the year that didn't make my list, allow me to explain the rules as in previous entries. The games featured are here on the basis of when they were originally released, on one of the original formats they were released upon. The only exception to this rule is if the game is sufficiently different in its conversions, such as Bionic Commando or Double Dragon on the NES, or Turtles 4 on the Mega Drive compared to the Super Nintendo one, say. I might not have played some of the games playing on screen at the moment, which is why they've probably missed out on the top 10 list that I've made, and I may have played some of them a lot later than their original release. They're all crackers though, you should try them. Stealth games were a huge genre post the success of Metal Gear Solid some 4 years beforehand. Indeed, there's a stealth game with a slightly different premise a bit later on in this list. Splinter Cell was the most direct aping of Metal Gear Solid, albeit a westernised version without all that half-hour cutscene guff. Sam Fisher, the Black Ops operative, would prove to be just as able at putting a fella down silently as Solid Snake was, and he would quickly become a mascot for the Xbox just as Master Chief was, or indeed Marcus Phoenix would end up being. Whilst his video games would also come out on the other formats, it always felt that Splinter Cell's games were most at home on Microsoft's green and black powerhouse. And what a debut this was. Ah, the black sheep of the Plumber family. The trip to the tropical paradise of Delfino has proved about as popular as an adult tiger at a nursery school over the past pair of decades, and it's fair to say it's not up there with Mario's other 3D adventures like the Galaxies, the 64s or the Odysseys. There's only one 64 and one Odyssey. I don't know why I did them as a plural, it's just that thing people do. However, Mario at his worst is still better than most game mascots at their best, as the water jetpack assisted gameplay hovers above the platforming pack on the behandled box of tricks known as the GameCube. A decent challenge and some great graphics and music almost cancel out the wonky flood pack controls, camera and the glitching issues. And honestly, it's not as bad as some make out. Let's go! Resident Evil and Silent Hill were certainly the market leaders of pants-spoiling, horror-based action adventures, but every now and again a company would put out a spooky title that was equally capable of separating bowel from fecal matter through fear alone. The company this time was surprisingly Nintendo, and the game was Eternal Darkness. Programmed by the team at Silicon Knights, Eternal Darkness was the first M-rated game put out by the House of Mario, and what a smart and creative game it was too. The player controls several characters across time and the world as they attempt to take down a foul entity intent on enslaving mankind. Don't you go enslaving me, buddy. Whilst it looks a lot like Resident Evil, there's a lot more to it than that. There are a variety of rune-activated magic spells, for one, that can be combined. Then, of course, there's the incredibly smart sanity meter, which does a lot of very strange, weird and wonderful things to the game, including some MGS-style breaking of the fourth wall. Eternal Darkness is brilliant, and it remains a shame that Nintendo never followed it up with a sequel. Or did they? See, I'm making you question your sanity now, aren't I? Woo! Being developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1 team, Metroid Fusion got it right straight out of the gate. That team, after all, were the geniuses behind Super Nintendo classic Super Metroid. A sequel to Super Metroid by the same team, but in my gene pocket? Are you crazy? Sign me up. This time, Samus Aran has to fight through an isolated space station swarming with a virus. Look, Samus is wearing a mask inside. Why, it's just like the last couple of years. Maybe not quite as long and maybe a tad more linear than Super Metroid, Fusion is still a beautiful game with crisp controls, tight gameplay and brilliant atmospheric music. And it's also not the only Metroid game on this list. We've had quite the run on Nintendo games, haven't we? The twin terrors of the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Color were truly hitting their stride in 2002, their second year of production. Whilst Wind Waker's look at the time was highly controversial, it has aged the game incredibly well. Coming out in Japan in 2002, the cel shading is stunning even 19 years later. Link takes to the high seas in this adventure as the usual dungeons are mysterious architecture on many, many islands, and Link controls the blustery elements with his eponymous baton, a stick called the Wind Waker. It's another musical item that's similar to the ocarina from your Ocarina of Time. It's not a Zelda game on par with the aforementioned Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild, but it deserves to be mentioned in the discussion for best games on the GameCube, which is why it's 6th in this list. A list made by an idiot. But I am an idiot with opinions. The third instalment in the Soulcalibur weapon, Twattery 'em Up, is probably the pinnacle for me of the entire series. It has an avoidance system upgraded to make it easier for fools like me, the addition of walls that can be used, a clash system that happens when two challengers hit each other at exactly the same time, and improved guard break mechanics. It's a solid progression of the thinking man's one-on-one fighter formula, and when it was ported to the Xbox, PlayStation 2 and GameCube the following year, it started the bizarre trend of out-of-place guest characters exclusive to each machine. Heihachi from Tekken, Link from Zelda, and 90s edgelord superhero Spawn turn up to bolster the numbers. And while they look like a bunch of out-of-place chumps in retrospect, it's kind of cute now when you look at things like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate or Mortal Kombat with its 80s action film Smash Bros. For Dads lineup. Hitman 1 was deeply flawed, but an incredibly interesting concept. Hitman 2 is that concept wonderfully realised. A slaying sandbox of free choice, each job has multiple different strategies to putting the hapless VIP targets right in the ground underneath your feet. You can indeed run in blasting away with an AK-47 machine gun, but really the cool kids will be poisoning, setting traps and pushing dudes off balconies without even being thought of, let alone seen. It's a game that rewards the player for critical thinking, skill and problem solving, with locked away weapons for those who do their job slinkily enough. A superb game with great mechanics. Go be the best ruthless bastard that you can be. It's what your parents would have wanted. Metroid Fusion was a grand continuation of the franchise, but the GameCube Metroid was an evolution. It's a first-person shooter, but it's also not that at all. It's a Metroid game. So yes, there's shooting alien beasties, but Metroid at its core is a sprawling, explorative adventure, and that is what this here is. Taking place in between the two NES stories, Samus Aran finds herself in trouble with the space pirates once again, in another atmospheric escapade. It's an innovative game with exquisite graphics and sound design, and despite the complete change in genre, the story, platforming and puzzle solving are second to none in Metroid Prime. Want to see your adrenal gland is still working? Put Burnout 2 in your PlayStation 2, GameCube or Xbox. Much like Hitman 2 earlier, Burnout 2 took the great concept from the flawed original and drove really quickly with it. A traffic-packed daredevil arcade racer, it is a driving game that rewards being as risky as humanly possible. The sense of speed is impeccable, making blinking an act of gross self-negligence, and your reward for all these near misses and paint-scraping overtakes is an increase to your boost bar, which makes you even quicker still. Burnout 2 also introduced the crash mode, where you have to do the opposite of the rest of the game, which is to cause as much property damage as possible by smashing your sports car into other things on wheels. It turns it into a weird strategy puzzle game with a trial and error element. Burnout 2 is the last in the series before Acclaim folded and the IP went to EA, and for me it lost something when it got all the official music and EA frippery. It's an exhilarating arcade racer in your damn house, and it's essential for your 6th generation console. GTA 3 was released with little hype, but it rapidly became the biggest selling game on the PS2 after a ton of exemplary reviews and glowing word of mouth. Glowing word of mouth like you've been licking a plutonium rod, that's how glowy it was. Grand Theft Auto Vice City, as a result, had a level of hype and expectation upon it that would crush a lesser title. It was as close to perfect as possibly it could be on the PlayStation 2, with just a year's worth of development since the last Epic. The gameplay was dramatically improved, the map expanded, the missions more varied, the voice cast more recognisable. The music might well be the greatest collection of pop songs ever curated for a video game. All of this is backed with a gloriously neon-soaked art design that follows the criminal endeavours of ne'er-do-well Tommy Vercetti in a Miami-inspired 80s cityscape. All the satire is there, all the little movie references are there. It's rich in the detail that Rockstar injects into their works, along with that trademark daft, puerile but sometimes cutting satire. And while certainly not the zenith of the series, I would say it's close to being mine and many other people's personal favourite. Grand Theft Auto Vice City, what a legend. Look, 2002 is in the bag, a big carrier bag full of fun games. 2003 then, by any standard of sequencing, is, well, next. It's a strange old year, but it's also a fun one. Like, subscribe and K, thanks, bye.